It's Wednesday afternoon, 4 p.m. in Central Europe. It's Space Café Israel time. Our Space Café Israel by Meidad Pariente with his guest Ran Livne will begin soon. As always, we really appreciate your participation and ongoing feedback, and we will learn and improve based on your feedback. I'm Elena Vocale, event coordinator at SpaceWatch.Global. SpaceWatch.Global is a Europe-based online platform for information in and about space and new space activities in a geopolitical context. I would like to thank all our private and corporate supporters that showed their commitment to keep our independent journalism alive. We really appreciate that. If you want to be part of the supporter team, it's just a click away from you on our website. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and the Space Café podcast. The latest one features Daniel Lieb from the Iceland Space Agency, and we also have new exciting episodes of Space Café Radio with Joseph Aspacher and Kevin O'Connell. They're definitely worth your time. Our fun shop is open for you on our website too, and it's a nice way for you to become a space watcher. If you've missed any of our previous web talks, don't worry, we have an archive on our webpage in the events section, and on YouTube, you can find us, of course. We will host our Space Café Israel live regularly, and with that, my job is done, and I'd like to hand over to your host today. Meidad, over to you.
Thank you, Elena. I love it, the way you say pariente. Thank you for that. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Space Café Israel, episode 5. My guest today, joining us from Las Vegas, is Ran Livne, Senior Director of Marketing and Business Development at MIT International, the former General Director of the Ramon Foundation and Manager of the Rakia mission. We're going to talk about how we progress from an Israeli space program to an ecosystem. Hello, Ran. Thank you for waking up so early and joining us.
Actually, I woke up like 4 a.m. because we had some Zooms in Israel. That's part of the hard things of working. Mainly, I'm mainly doing the US market in eyesight. So traveling to the USA and then the Israelis are starting Zooming on 4 a.m. So it's like the midday now. So it's okay.
Cool. Anyways, as our audience probably already know, I always start with the same question. Ran, can you share with us something personal that people don't know about you and can't find on your LinkedIn or CV?
Okay. It's a tricky question. I think it's somewhere on my LinkedIn page, but it's kind of dig behind or under everything. But my BA is actually on literature and sociology, which is, usually people kind of, why, this guy is a space dude. So either he studied engineering or finance or economics or anything. But actually my BA from Tel Aviv University is on sociology and literature. And if you ask me, I think that this is one of the most influential things that I've done. The Tel Aviv School of Literature in Tel Aviv University is quite unique in the fact that its paradigm claims that everything is a text. Even when you see art or when you listen to music, you translate it into words that, opens up your emotions. My MBA was from the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya and the Wharton School in Penn University. There is like a global consulting track that's mutual. And when I started practicing business consulting after I studied in the university, I realized that studying literature actually gave me quite an advantage. And the main reason for that is storytelling. I mean, as an entrepreneur, that at the end of the day, it's much more important than your product, your market, your business cases, whether you can tell your actual story. And, in Harvard Business School today, in their MBA, one of the main courses is storytelling. So I kind of feels like it kind of influenced my life for the best. I wanted to write books when I was a teenager and in the beginning of my 20s, but eventually became a space person. But still, it's one of the essence of what I'm doing, trying to tell good stories and understanding other people's stories.
Wow. So let me share with you that I'm also a writer. and I even published a book of short stories I wrote. It wasn't a huge success. It sold like 150 copies, but yeah, I can completely relate to what you said.
It's unbelievable that I know you for like few years and I haven't read the book. So now you'll have to send it over or let me know where can I purchase it.
Yes. No. You'll get your copy. And I think this is one of the reasons that what used to be STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, today is called STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Yeah. So, wow, amazing. Thanks for sharing. My next question regarding your private career, starting from innovation at the university to Director General of the Ramon Foundation. Can you connect the dots for us?
I think that I'm now starting the second phase of my career, but the first one was to be a social entrepreneur. I joined the Tel Aviv University, aiming actually to be a professor in literature or sociology. My brother is a professor in Ann Arbor. My father taught in Tel Aviv University. And for different reasons, I joined the Tel Aviv University Student Union, student body board, which is very strong, and managed to do lots of social entrepreneurship over there. That was always kind of half social, half business modeling, doing now they call it the fourth check, trying to make social impact. But we managed to raise money for Tel Aviv's, Israel's biggest housing scholarship fund. We established the Tel Aviv University Innovation Center and did lots of open different companies that benefited the students. And from there, I went to business consulting, mainly consulting public entities in Israel, hospitals, universities, and municipalities. In all of those, I basically generated new business models. And in 2015, at the beginning of 2015, I met with Ramon in the office of the small consulting, the boutique consulting firm that I worked for, that's still managed by Oved Yechezkel. And basically the idea was to make a strategic report about how this amazing nonprofit called Ramon Foundation can be sustainable, can adapt business models in order for WANA to stop fundraising. And joined Ramon Foundation in June 2015. One of my biggest prides is not only all of the projects that the foundation is doing in Israel and all across the world, but also the fact that it's one of the only nonprofits that you probably heard or known of, that's like 75% of its income comes from selling services, whether it's in Chile, Singapore, in Israel. Basically, they have products with product managers who are managing programs and basically being offered to different entities in Israel and the world. And this was kind of my specialty. I didn't know anything about space 7 years ago. I mean, I knew like anyone that likes a little science fiction and everything, and never met an astronaut, never knew how a satellite operates. In Israel, there is like a very strong satellite unit in the Israeli army. I was a plains combat soldier. But obviously, like anyone who's watching us or follows SpaceWatch or fell in love with it instantly, is something that's truly inspiring. I mean, space is art. You said STEAM, we added the art, everything is art. And the engineering is art, and the fact that we're dreaming. I was sitting yesterday with guys that are doing analytics on Earth observation. It was like 6 or 7 different companies. And we discussed the connection between what we're doing here and now, that can be analytics over Earth, hyperspectral imagery for farmers or for infrastructure or whatever, to space exploration, which can be, not that much related. I mean, what's the connection between AWS cloud services for the space industry to Blue Origin and space exploration? I think that all of us agreed that part of the fact that we are doing space, even if we are doing satellites that impacts here and now Earth, is the fact that we're dreaming big and far away and thinking about Mars and other planets. So I fell in love with space, did a very intense tenure in Ramon Foundation, been there a bit more than 7 years. Have to admit that when I signed the contract with Ramon Foundation, my agreement with the late Ramon was that I'm coming for 3 years, spending some time in the non-profit, and then joining the business or public sector. Eventually, it became 7 years and a very big, very intense tenure. And now I'm in ISI, which is kind of neat because I managed to get to touch different parts of the space ecosystem on my daily work.
Cool. I want to take you back to the moment that you realized that the Rakia mission is actually going to happen. You get the green light, you know that it's going to happen, you know that you're going to manage this, and share with us first, how did you get the news and how happy were you?
So I didn't manage Rakia, I was kind of chairing it. There's Marav Katriel who managed the mission, and there's an entire team that managed it from there. But I was kind of in Hebrew we say, Rosh Mesimat Rakia, the chairman of it, basically build the infrastructure. I think thinking about what happened in Rakia, kind of give you an essence of what's happening in new space. The first time I heard of this possibility was way back in around 2016, 2017. Michael Suferdini, who's now the CEO of Axiom, came to Israel. We got an introduction from a former astronaut who back then worked in SpaceX, Garrett Reisman, that you probably know as well. And he sent a very weird email. I mean, I remind you, wasn't familiar so much about the space industry, but this guy is writing down that he's going to establish a company, he's going to build a private space station. Axiom wasn't founded yet. I have this email on my mailbox. It was, I don't even recall, it wasn't from Gmail, but it was from one of the services. And I remember me talking to Garrett and telling him, who is this weird guy? And Garrett back then told me, listen, Michael Suferdini ran the ISS program in NASA. Meet this guy, he's going to be the next Elon Musk. I don't know if but he said, listen, this company that he's funding can be a SpaceX. I'm not sure he compared it, but I clearly remember that we kind of tried to do a small due diligence, realized it's completely serious, came to Israel, met with the Israeli Space Agency, met with us. A year after that, he said, listen, until we're building our module, we're raising money, we're going to attempt to pass a regulation in the US that will be able to send private astronauts. This will be the next Israeli opportunity. Axiom folks came here to Israel, met with us, and for the first time, I sat with two of Axiom's first employees, Michael Lopez Alegria, who commanded the AX-1, and Amir Blachman, who's back then, I think he was employee number 1. And we talked about the future private astronaut, and they kind of said, listen, we are looking for potential clients. We're going to governments that won't get supported by the US government, but will want to send their astronaut through Axiom. And I remember back then that I told them, listen, I think that your first astronaut is going to be philanthropist. If you're asking Ramon Foundation what we think, you should go for a philanthropist, because at the end of the day, I remember me thinking about Jewish philanthropy in Israel. That's, if you're looking at it, and we have some international guests here, Jewish philanthropy in Israel is very weird. I mean, you have these guys who are bringing bicycle races, the Giro d'Italia to Israel. Sylvan Adams paid for Madonna to come and play in the Eurovision, bringing Formula 2 races, SpaceIL, think about it. What a weird philanthropic way. If you have money, donate it directly to education. No, they said, we want to inspire children, so let's bring $100 million philanthropic money to inspire for an engineering project. So it was kind of clear to me that we'll be able to, if we'll be lucky, we'll be able to find a philanthropist. We started to try to raise money for it. It didn't manage to raise all of the funding. We wanted to raise $60 million and then to do screening process to send the first female Israeli astronaut. And Eytan knew also Garrett. Garrett stayed at Eytan's place a few times. They talked about it a while. And when he started to do the medical process, we kind of started talking about it, about the essence of the mission. I have to tell you that when Eytan took it, I was quite sure that I was amazed by the fact that he took it. I don't know if you know him, but he's very wealthy individual, and this family is very well known in the non-profit sector here in Israel. They've been donating to non-profits all over, and most Israelis, like 99.5% of them, have no idea who he is, despite the fact that he's a very wealthy individual. In Israel, you know most of the high net worth people, but the Stibbe family donated money over the year to universities, different projects that are well known across Israel, from Holocaust survivors to children with disabilities, and no one knows their name. And I remember me telling my wife, there is no chance that Stibbe is going to take it because it will make him a household name. And they're kind of avoiding media at all costs. But I remember that I sat with him and we talked about the fact that it shouldn't be one guy that's going into space. Let's try to do something new. Let's try to do a public-private partnership. Let's try to enter a non-profit and try to open the space ecosystem. And it kind of really fitted his set of mind. Eytan is an impact investor. So usually when he's building infrastructure in Africa, he's not looking at necessarily I remember me talking to one of his employees that they're not necessarily looking for the profit and loss from the power station or from the neighborhood or whatever. They're looking to impact the entire ecosystem that's around it. And the essence of the first private-public partnership in human spaceflight here was to try to generate an ecosystem. So I think that the moment that I realized that it's happening was the moment that I understood from Axiom medical team that Eytan is doing the actual test. I'm texting to him at night saying, okay, is there something that we need to talk about? I said, come and meet me tomorrow at the office, which is something that Eytan usually didn't do with me, at least. And I was over the moon about it. I was really over the moon about it. It was phenomenal.
Wow. Such a story. You mentioned the late Rona Ramon. People don't know it, but Rona had such a great sense of humor. She was a super funny human being, sometimes hilarious. Can you share a funny anecdote you shared with Rona?
It's hard to remember with just one. I can tell you this. Rona was the most alive person that I met that kept on thinking about the meanings of death and meaning of life. Whenever I went to her house, I used to see philosophy books, not on the library, on the kitchen desk, on the kitchen table. Viktor Frankl, Nietzsche, and she always kind of looked for the essence of life on her educational and social work in Ramon Foundation, when she was mentoring other people who went through different tragedies and all over. And one of the things that I remember her telling me is that the party is now. When you think about someone that lost her husband and eldest son, you know that it's always on the back of your mind. To say the party is now is something that's amazing. Whenever we used to travel to the States to do fundraising, she always hiked. She was like, okay, so we're finishing the meeting, let's go and climb a mountain. Every Tuesday, she used to do the Israel Trail. The Israel Trail is like a trail from the northern part of Israel to Eilat, to the southern part. Every Tuesday, it was like a saint. There was once and after, I think it was a lunch or a dinner with the prime minister and his wife, when she got an honor to light a beacon at the Israeli Independence Day, which is a huge thing here. And like they said, okay, we're gathering all of these great people who are going to light a beacon. Let's have lunch. She said, hell no. It's Tuesday. I'm working. And Chloe knew to put herself in the center, and she was an incredible human being, that kind of put everything in perspective in terms of what's important and what's not important.
Yeah, we miss her a lot. Working with NASA on the Rakia mission, what was the most difficult challenges?
I think that it's more appropriate to ask maybe Eytan or Melody, that was the program manager. But in terms of the infrastructure of the mission, I think that this was the first time that there is fully private mission to the ISS. You have to realize that the concept of space tourists or private people who are going into orbit is not new. People at the beginning of the millennium already flew, 8 or 9 of them flew to the ISS because the Russians needed new revenue streams for the space program, so they sold tickets. But what happened here is that the Americans basically said, these guys are paying, I don't know, $20, $30 million. They're utilizing international assets. And it's not good because they are not contributing almost anything to humanity, aside for the revenue stream, which is extremely important. And I can argue with you even about the first private space missions of this millennium, the Blue Origin ones, Inspiration 4, which is a great mission, all of them, whether they had a scientific, I wouldn't even say justification, but contribution. I know the science that the Inspiration 4 did in their mission. It's extremely important, but it's very basic. And I think that in Rakia, that NASA at the beginning thought they had 2 anomalies. The first one was, okay, how are we going to facilitate these 4 private individuals in the ISS? 3 of them are not qualified astronauts, in good shape, but not as good shape as professional astronauts. What are they going to do there for 8-10 days? Lots of anomalies, from how we train them, how we get them. These guys, whether they're going to sit all day in the Capella and take photos of the Earth. I mean, the ISS is not it's not a 5-star hotel. So this was the first anomaly. The second one was mainly in Rakia, is the fact that we were very Israelis and had lots of chutzpah to basically push everything onto the mission. So at the beginning, we sat with some NASA official, described the fact we're going to send them, trying to send significant amount of payload. They thought that we were going to send very basic science. But I remember the first meetings that the kind of, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to do an open source mission. We're going to send a call, get the people to apply to it, do a short evaluation process that will mainly say whether these experiments are feasible or not. So Eytan will be able to conduct as much science as it can. Maybe I should have started with that. The goal was to have as much science as we can on the ISS while Eytan Stibbe is in space. This is the essence of Rakia, to have an open source mission. Open source missions mean that usually these private human space flights are being funded by governments. The agenda is being determined by government, being run by governments. And here we said it's going to be completely private. Let's do it in open source, small bureaucracy. Let's try to be as physical as it can. And basically you can say by the way it's evaluated that basically the first meeting with the NASA official, even with Axiom, they said, listen, it's not working like that. Nothing will work. Why? Because you're an engineer. So how do you plan this sort of mission? You say, okay, I have 8 to 10 days. So let's take 8 days. Let's take 24 hours, 8 of them, the astronauts sleep, 3 of them are routines. Let's try to break down and let's see how much science can he do in the rest of his day. And here we said, no, we'll be Israelis. So first of all, we'll pick the experiment, then we'll try to fix down there.
To build the schedule.
Yeah. So how much room do you have in the Dragon spacecraft to carry the experiments? We couldn't care less. In our first contract that we signed with Axiom, they provided us with 40 minutes of live streaming from the ISS, which wasn't enough. I asked for like 1 hour live streaming per day, and here they gave me 40 minutes for 10 days. Yeah. So the way we try to cope with it is basically walking through private entities. So you have to think about the guy, even at Axiom, not necessarily NASA, that sits in a Zoom meeting with these Israeli guys that have no experience in human spaceflight and saying, okay, how much time do we have live streaming? 40 minutes. It's not going to work like this. We need 1 hour. Yeah, but you know, the infrastructure is built, so you'll get 40 minutes. So no, we'll get 1 hour. Okay, so it's not possible. Give me a week, Christian, the guy from Axiom, I'll get back to you. You'll see that I'll get 1 hour. We're coming back for a cadence meeting the week after. Listen, I figured out that there is a camera that's going to be launched with space application. It's a phenomenal European company. It's going to be in the Columbus model. They will give us, I already finished the negotiations with them. We'll get 1 hour of and it's like, I'm supposed to do it. How come you know about this video camera? And I think that it kind of was on the last minute. They sent the video camera like 2 or 3 months before that. They did proof of concepts that will be able to do live streaming. I think 2 weeks before that they managed. Room. We have a certain amount of room in the Dragon capsule. And you have to realize the fact that usually to take human spaceflight mission takes 3 years. 1 year of planning, 1 year of selecting the different experiments and trying to execute them. And then you're going to start launching and doing all of the facilities. Here we did like 11, 12 months, maybe a little bit more because the flight was delayed. But from the beginning, we said we're going to try to relay as much as possible, not on NASA, but on private companies. And fortunately for us, the ISS is full of private companies that know to do integration, whether there are NanoRec, space applications, TechShock, Bioserve. I'll probably forget some of them, but I think that what happened is that we had roughly 35 experiments. Some of them were in Rakia, some of them was pre and post, some of them was launch after. All of them worked with private partners. All of them got phenomenal services. And at the end of the day, while NASA didn't assist us directly in sending the payload, on the time of the schedule of executing, you could see on the week of the mission that they were fully supportive. They really love the fact that these guys are actually going into orbit to do science. So the beginning was very hard because basically everybody told us it's not possible, there is regulation. We managed to work things collaborating with them and private. This was, I think, the main challenge.
Amazing. By the way, nothing is a coincidence and there is no such thing as luck. So good for you. Speaking about the 35 experiments, from your point of view, what are the most promising outcomes from the experiments?
In January, not me, I'm not involved, but Ramon Foundation and Rakia is going to do a conference about the scientific results, which will be kind of promising. So while I know most of the results, I'm not supposed to talk about them. I can tell you that, and I assume that it's going to be a great party because it was quite a success. I can tell you that I loved all of the experiments. I loved the fact that you had actual proof of concept for space systems. NSLcomm sent an experiment that kind of saved them a lot of money because instead of sending and launching a full satellite, they launched only the antenna and managed to take take pictures of it from different angles. It was quite successful to them, and I assume that they will publish the end results in the near future. The most famous one is groundbreaking, Moran Berkowitz from the Technion and MIT and NASA Ames. These guys are manufacturing fluid lenses, which is quite remarkable. It was really nice to see. You know, it was one of the great things in human space flights, no offense, Meidad, more than satellites, it's very visual. I mean, at the end of the day, you can see someone that's constructing and playing, and it's not a satellite that you doesn't necessarily see how it rotates, and you know, it's bricks and stones. So I remember sitting and seeing Eytan kind of manufacturing the lenses and examining them and taking out the bubbles from it. It was phenomenal. And so there was some really high engineering, and also the medical stuff is quite exciting. The experiments by brain.space, that kind of was the first time that they actually lively monitored the brain 360 degrees and managed to get live telemetry. It was quite groundbreaking. I love all, don't ask me to pick one. I mean, all of them were phenomenal by a beautiful kaleidoscope of different scientists and engineers.
Yeah, I totally agree regarding the medical experiments, especially since I promised my daughter that we're going to spend her 30th birthday in the space hotel that will be opened in a few years. So medicine in space is kind of important for our kids and grandchildren. Ran, during your career, you met a lot of startups and new space companies. Is there a difference between space startups and other domain startups that you can relate to and share with us?
So this is the one part of the conversation where, and again, I don't want to be provocative or anything, that I won't be as optimistic as I usually am. I think that the main challenge of space entrepreneurs is a set of mind that people are falling in love with the technology and not necessarily the market. Now, usually when an investor is coming to invest in a company, in a startup, there used to be like this triangle of how's the market look, how the technology look, and how the team looks. And our investors are basically investing in also a triangle: the team, and the team. Because the technology can change, the market can utterly change in like a year or so. And I think the key challenge here of this industry is to understand where the market is going. I mean, we're not an academy. In academy, you have to, in Tel Aviv University, they say to search for the unknown, to seek the truth, and then to teach the truth. This is what professors and researchers are doing. They are looking for the truth or the unknown, and then teaching it back to other students. Here, the idea is to generate, and the main challenge of the space industry is to generate a real lower Earth orbit economy. The reason that I remind you that I didn't came from the space industry. So the first question that I asked Ramon, I knew a lot about business consulting, private sector and public sector. The first question I asked was, okay, we landed on the moon in 1972. What happened since? And why haven't we gone back to them? And the second question I asked, it was back in 2016. 2016 is 6 years ago. Like, you know, you had IoT and connectivity and all of these sort of things, starting of electric cars and autonomous cars. I asked them, why are astronauts still flying in Soyuz? It was designed in the late 50s. And the reason for that is that mankind did space as a research endeavor and didn't try to generate an economy around it. And this is why, if you ask me, look at COVID. After like 6 months, Moderna and Pfizer already had, even before that, prototypes, and eventually they got vaccines. In space, people are talking about the DART mission. What will happen if we'll have an astronaut? If we would have a strong private sector, no doubt that humanity would be able to cope with any challenge that we have. So when you're asking me about promising startups, the key difference between an entrepreneur that's doing space and an entrepreneur that's doing retail or fintech or whatever is usually that we're too in love with the technology and the research, not necessarily the use case. I think that I mean, everybody's want to build launchers and build satellites. Have to tell you, I don't see any advantage of unless you have a huge competitive advantage. I saw a presentation yesterday by Satellogy, launching hundreds of satellites into orbit. The Maxars, the planets, the black skies of the world, the ISIs of the world. I mean, do you really want to compete with these guys? Why you don't see entrepreneurs in normal retail or in other markets? Because there are markets that are really stagnant, and you don't compete with Shupersal or Tesco,
7-Eleven,
right? You want to compete with them because they're existing, they control the market as well. We need to think about more innovative. So if you ask me about promising Israeli startups, I would say that the future of our industry should be mainly in software, mainly in analytics. When you're looking in Israel, Israel is considered to be a startup nation. The highest percentage of startups per capita, foreign investment per capita, employees that are doing R&D in the workforce. We're very, very proud of it. Most of them are doing data or looking for niches. Amazon, Google couldn't be founded and established in Israel. Waze, yes. Wix, yes. Monday.com, yes. These are like small niches that are doing fantastic. So I love these niche companies that you can consider them as a market leader. I love Astera. I love them. Astera is a brilliant Israeli startup that's using SAR satellites, SAR imagery, in order to detect water leaks. Apparently, I didn't know this. Like 20 to 30% of the sweet water in the world are getting lost in pipes, in water leaks. So these guys are giving the exact intelligence for municipalities and cities where there are water leaks, managing to save a lot of money. Now, I like Astera. I don't think that even Eli knows that I'm the CEO and Yuval, the head of R&D, and the founder, Loren. I love them because they're very lean. They're very focused on what they're doing. They're not moving aside. They went to SAR imagery, which, no offense to any of the SAR experts, almost no one works with. Almost no one knows how to cooperate with it, to do intelligent things with them. So they're going to this niche, finding a competitive advantage. Now they have a new product looking for lithium, and they'll have few more products. But assuming that the SAR, the X-band, the L-band that they are looking to is going to grow, they're going to be massive. And I love the fact that they're really focused and intended. So this is a good example. Another example is ISI, which is, if you ask me, a phenomenal company.
We'll touch base regarding your new career soon. And I must say, I completely agree with you. Even though I've been a satellite guy for 27 years, I try to keep myself not in love with technology. And I always challenge anyone around me if we can find another media or another domain that can provide the service at a lower cost point. So if you can provide the same service with flying submarines, let's do that with flying submarines. Satellites are just a means to an end. They are not the goal.
Agreed.
So we talked about ISI. Congratulations on your new position. Can you share the challenges that made you choose this career path? Why ISI? Why this role? And Go ahead.
So if you ask me, if you would met me 7 or 8 years ago, I would tell you that I'll probably end up in the Israeli public sector. Decided like 2 or 3 years ago, around the beginning of the Rakia mission, that made me realize that probably my future is not there and that I love space. I think that the main decision today, we're living in a flat world. You know, I'm staying here in Las Vegas, so I'm meeting all of these companies that are doing cloud analytics, etc. And you realize how much flat the world. You're meeting with a company that have 4 employees. One of them is in Spain, one of them in Scotland, one in Denmark, and one in the US. So I think that the first decision was that I want to do space. The second decision was with my wife. You know, eventually we'll keep on talking about careers. If you ask me, any intelligent talk about career has to start with your family. What's your aspiration? What are you doing? I talked to you before this session started, and you told me about the new opportunities that you were looking after. Probably the first person that you talked to was Maya, and the first and the last. I mean, she was in the beginning and at the end. And so we decided, my wife and I, that we want to live in Israel. Hence, I wanted to do space, commercial space, because I was still in a non-profit, and to have a very genuine business experience that will be completely business. Because even when I work in consulting, I was still doing a lot of public sector consulting work. I think that in Israel, the space ecosystem is composed out of 40, 60 companies. Not all of them are completely new space. I mean, Stemrad are doing a phenomenal job and have their radiation vest now in Artemis. They're not necessarily a space company. They're doing radiation vests, which is amazing. So I wanted a new space company that will be doing only space and that will be competitive, which means it will have the potential to be one of the biggest in the world. And again, I talked to guys in ISI, so they told me, listen, we're a public company, you can't talk about all of our business model and what we're doing. But ISI, today, is the biggest space company in Israel in terms of who's doing only space. Obviously, IAI is much bigger, but if you're looking only on the Space Center, it's going B, it's a huge force that's growing in the global space ecosystem. And I mean, I'm here in AWS showing presentations, going into meetings after the Maxars and Planets and Satellogics and Black Skies of the world went and meeting potential clients. We're not that behind. Sometimes we're even ahead, which is phenomenal. And the company is very agile. I mean, I think that you said it also before that. You said, listen, I know this company for 22 years. Today, it's much younger than it was 7 years ago. So a big shout out. You think that the real turning point is the company got new management around 2015. It kind of shifted it from an aerospace company that operated satellites into a high-tech company that does lots of analytics. I think that around 40% of the employees are doing actually R&D and looking for the most extreme use cases, extreme there. Very agile. So if I met someone in the end that's have a project at the end of the world, I'm being able to task the satellites and get instant results. And I love the atmosphere. I mean, despite the fact that it's a well-established company, very agile, have very innovative and entrepreneurial point of view. I mean, at the end of the day, we're Israelis. The key advantage of Israelis is not that we are the smartest ones or have the most work ethics, is the fact we're very agile. We say that nothing is impossible. I don't like to say the chutzpah, but you know, Charlie Bolden once told me, listen, don't forget that it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. So when you're looking at about the fact that, you know, the ISI won the Chilean tender, and we have phenomenal partners there that are building a space ecosystem. The fact that the company actually competed head-to-head with the biggest companies in the world and won shows a lot about the spirit and the fact that, you know, nothing is impossible. And I love the atmosphere. I love the fact that, you know, it's very changing, and I love the fact that in terms of the use cases that the company is doing the most cutting edge things possible.
And you personally, what would you like to bring from your experience, life experience, into the company's culture and future products?
I think that the key challenge, I'm basically the director of marketing in North America. And I think that this is a very challenging market if you're looking at it, and it's also the biggest market in the world. So I think that to work in a more methodological way, setting a presence in the US and Canada and all of North America, and trying to think outside of the box about the story that we're telling are the main things that I'm adding. I have to tell you that so far it's been a lot of learning experience in terms of, I'm always saying that a good meeting is a meeting that you learn something new in. I mean, whether it was a marketing meeting or engineering meeting, the question is whether you're taking something more. So I'm on a daily basis learning something new, whether it's from our partners or for people inside the company. And I assume that ISI, it's already growing. So the next few years will be phenomenal for us.
Great. And last question from my side, and then we'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Ron, what do you think will be the best attribute of the Israeli space industry in 2050? When people will say in 2050, Israeli space industry, what do they will think of?
So I think that, and again, I've been saying it for a long time. The point is that Israel needs to find its niche. We usually talk about remember that in the first meeting I had with Minister Yizhar Shai, the former science minister, I talked to him about mobility, and he kind of took it and threw it away. Israel in 2008 had 40 companies that did automotive. 2018, around 700. Today we have around 800. So if anyone who's buying a car today probably have Israeli technology in it. And the reason for it is the fact that in this huge automotive, and Israel have no heritage in automotive. We never manufacture here. We're not Japan, France, Italy, US. We have no idea how a wheel or a motor or an engine looks like. But if Israeli entrepreneurs found the niche was data science, cyber, sensor. This is what all of these 800 startups are doing. So if you're looking about space assets, humans in space, I assume that Israel will have 2 or 3 main contributions that are completely the opposite of where the government is spending now money. The government now is spending money mainly on satellites and big projects. The last tender, which is phenomenal if you ask me, the TELEM, is build a civilian infrastructure. But the essence, if you ask me about the contribution, there's a huge wave called new space. By, you said 2050? So 2050, let's talk about it. We'll have, let's say, a couple of dozens of people, maybe more, who are living and working in space. We'll have 2 or 3 or 4 space stations. Earth will be monitored by very high resolution satellites, 10 centimeters per pixel from lower Earth orbit, connectivity. We'll have lots of constellation, like you have precise positioning, right? So you'll have huge amount of communication satellites, Starlinks and OneWebs and Chinese and whoever of the world will be able to provide connectivity all over. I think that Israel's main contribution is going to be in 3 different fields. 1, cyber. The reason for that is that we're strong in it today. I think that cyber companies in Israel are in count, don't get me on you need to ask Itzik Ben Israel on the real number, but around 10% of the revenues in the cyber world, which is phenomenal. 1, cyber. Second thing is data. coping with data, analyzing it, huge amounts of petabytes and petabytes of data are going over will be generated and distributed through space, whether it will be in a QKD or you name it. And the third thing that I think that Israel is quite strong in today on Earth is bioconvergence and biomed. Again, I don't know how much big this market is going to be, but you'll find probably Israeli solutions over there. But in terms of these are the main three fields that I think that Israel will be a key player on. In order for that to happen, there has to be a lower Earth orbit economy, and you can see it now formulating. I mean, you can see it now form. So, there are more and more companies, and etc. These are the main three fields I think Israel can be a key player of.
Do you see any contribution for exoplanet agriculture on Mars, on the Moon? Precision farming?
It really depends. I think that you know the space that we grew up to is the space industry is an industry of spin-offs. People are doing R&D for the Apollo program, and then yada, Corning, you know, the plates, and all different sorts of things. I think that what's happening now is that Earth and space becoming one, meaning that, you know, you're using off the shelf things that are working on Earth, and you're using up in space. And I'll be front forward with you. Earth technology is far more advanced than space technology. As a matter of fact, let's put our hand on our hearts and be honest. Satellites are rather stupid. Satellites are basically a telescope with a transmitter. I sat in a workshop yesterday. You can talk. It was published that the AWS did a demonstration of onboard processing on a deorbit project. Basically, sent a satellite into orbit, a small one, took lots of imagery, did onboarding processing, basically through the cloudy pictures and deleted them or vanished them and then sent it down. And this was like a breakthrough. Guys, we're in 2022. These technologies were available on Earth at the beginning of the millennium. I think you'll correct me. So I think that you will see where Israel is strong today in other fields, we will be strong later. Is Israel strong in agriculture? We are. Are we leading the world? We can argue. There are some phenomenal companies. Phenomenal. them.I is phenomenal. We have lots of agri-tech. So maybe you're right. But the key question here is there a market or not? Food tech. Food tech is quite interesting because Israel is very strong in calculative meat, in meat that's being reproduced from not from cows, but doing
cells. Yeah,
it's phenomenal. So assuming that these startups from Rehovot, like an complete ecosystem that's leading the world, people will eat Israeli meat in space, obviously. I mean, Aleph Farms is the world leader. It's an Israeli company. All of us are very proud of it. Phenomenal company. But in order for Aleph Farms to remain the leading one in space, they have to be also leading here on Earth. And this is the fact that we'll see. And we'll see more and more new entrants. I mean, Itzik Rice, the head of, the director of Sheba Hospitals, they sent like 5 to 8 different experiments with Eytan Stibbe. And he kept on saying, listen, you'll see that the moment there will be more demand for scientific medical services in orbit, we will be there. So I think that this is the equivalent. Where Israel is strong on Earth, will be also strong in space.
Great perspective. Thanks for that. Elena, let's open the floor for questions from the audience.
Sure. So the first question is, can you describe us the landscape of space companies in Israel? old and new space, what's specific or different from other countries?
So the true expert about the history of the Israeli space industry and why it's shaped like this is not me in this call. It's Meidad. But Israel has a very, very bizarre story of how we generated the space ecosystem. What happened is that it's a military-based space program that was established because of peace. We signed peace agreement with the Egyptian, so we couldn't send spy satellites, spy planes to look whether the Egyptian are passing the Suez Canal and going to the Sinai Peninsula. So they decided to send a satellite into orbit. I think that the decision was the beginning of the 80s or the end of the 70s, which Israel had no idea what to do. So they manufactured and managed to send OFIC satellites, and basically generated a complete ecosystem around it, which means that Israel did at the beginning and also today all of the different components to have a space program, from a launcher, satellite systems, ground segments, from the computer chips, the transmitters, the camera, anything, all of the sensors, everything. If you'll take Yahud, IAI facility in Yahud, 80 or 100 kilometers, Meidad will correct me if I'm wrong, you can find all of the different companies that can basically do everything. So this is more the basic Israeli space ecosystem. With the dawn of new space, you could see a lot of companies that are starting to do actual new space. When I'm saying actual new space, a lot of different definitions. My definition is companies that are doing mainly space as a business. So you could see lots of companies that started to fund, whether they are people from Elbit, IAI, or whatever that started, or the Israeli military that started different startups. Some of them are doing mainstream stuff, and some of them are doing niche. Space Pharma is a company that's doing miniature laboratories. It's founded by the former commander of the Israeli satellite unit. NSL that Meidad and I talked about, founded by two guys who were in IAI. And I think that now you can see more companies who are doing space analytics, more than you can think of, which are coming from very different angle. I sat with a company, phenomenal company called Momentic. These guys are serial entrepreneurs doing data, decided to utilize different satellites in order to look for gases in the atmosphere. They're monitoring carbon footprint and all sorts of different things. But these guys aren't necessarily space people. So lots of people are now coming to do data in terms of Earth observation, communication, and so also the former Israeli Minister of Science called it repurposing, which means that companies that have their Earth product are now repurposing it to space. So Meidad and I mentioned Aleph Farms, company does manufacture artificial meat, not artificial, they're basically taking cow cells, reproducing them in manner. So these guys did some experience in space, world leader. Stemrad, company does radiation vests and also acquired by Lockheed Martin and manufacturing the radiation vest in Artemis. So there are lots of companies like this. So roughly, I would say 65 companies. And the expectations, if you're looking at all of the reports, are that we'll have around 300. You have to realize the fact that in Israel, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say money on the floor, but lots of VCs and investors and money that's looking for open innovation. So if you're coming with a very good use case and you have a strong team, you'll probably be able to raise money. So we keep on hearing on new startups on a weekly basis.
I would add that, as I see it, the difference between the Israel ecosystem and other ecosystems like in Asia, Europe, Africa, and North America is I'm still waiting for spin-offs of universities and student projects. Most of the leading nanosatellite companies started off as a team of students that work together on a university project and then started up their space company. In Israel, as Ran mentioned, most of the space companies, the new space companies, were established by veterans of the industry that left the old aerospace and started the new company. So I hope that in the future we'll see more companies coming out from universities and young people and less gray hair startups.
Yeah, but it is interesting that you're mentioning it because it's a great perspective, Meidad. I think that you can see the seeds. I mean, I can think of 2 or 3 examples in the last few years. Astera is more than 2-3 years, but they basically were founded by Lauren that was done in Bloomberg's class. So it's university. You know, the new startup of Meidad Pariente to Ben Gurion University. We're not allowed to say what these guys are doing, but it's groundbreaking. And I think that the moment that we have now, and you were one of the pioneers of small satellites in Israel, of the nano satellites, you have actually Tel Aviv University, Ariel, other places that are manufacturing satellites. You'll see more and more and more of these entrepreneurs. I completely agree with you. Great angle.
Elena, do we have time for another question?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. The second question comes from Luis Lavis. As someone who did not start his career in the space industry, what advice would you give to someone who wants to do the same? He mentions that he has a background in communication and TV industry. Is it a tough process? Should one get more education trainings in space matters? Thank you for this very interesting discussion, he says too.
So I have to say that usually when I give presentations about new space, I'm trying to compare with the Apollo 11 control room in NASA to the SpaceX control room in NASA when they launched the first reusable launcher, the Falcon 9. And you could see the different faces. As Meidad said, from a very gray-haired industry in the 60s, 70s, and 80s and 90s, even in the beginning of the millennium, becoming a very young one. Space industry was never so open as it is today. At the end of the day, you're talking to someone. I mean, when Meidad called me, I told him, listen, I don't know if I said, listen, you were very strong and an essential part of the Israeli ecosystem here in the last few years. You have to do this. I studied literature and sociology. We started with this. So you have background in communication, it's phenomenal. Simply apply to a space company. This is the best advice I can give you. You can also go to the ISU, which is phenomenal, and I'm a true advocate of the International Space University. Try to apply to their programs, but at the end of the day, start working in it. The presentation that was given yesterday here in Las Vegas in the AWS conference of these guys who did onboard processing with the orbit, 2 engineers that had no background in space. They said, we realize that there is limitations and everything, but space becoming much more accessible. You used to have at least a PhD or an MA in mechanical engineering or whatever to be in a C-level in a space company. Today, young people are entering it. Simply apply to a space company and start working there. This is the best experience that you can have.
And I would add, if I may, it's not rocket science. Really, it's not. No longer. You don't have to do all the math using a ruler and a pencil. If high school kids can build satellites, anyone can build satellites, and it's not such a glass ceiling as it looks like. Space is, I completely agree with Ron. Space is for everyone. And if you are interested, just go and find a job. Start from something. And maybe you will direct movies in space.
And also, if I may add something, I am a law school student. So, you know, there's always a tiny space for you if you want to find it. And just one more question, and because we're running out of time. So Jay asks, for future success in technology for humans in space, Do you think that it needs to be more open source and interchangeable like car parts? It seems to me that SpaceX is very secretive or closed. Maybe the Axiom or the Orbital Reef group of companies would support this better for the ecosystem and for Israel involvement. I'm very interested in your thoughts on this topic.
First of all, I know Jay is working for IAI. So your question is coming out of a position that you work in a company that manufactures satellites. As you noticed, when you asked me about when Meidad asked me about the future, I went to other fields, not hardware. Not only because Israel is not that strong in hardware, but also, I mean, we're world leader in computer and semiconductors. We have here Mellanox and Intel, very big factory, probably one of the biggest in the world, but in other fields now. You have to realize that when you're talking about open source, usually you talk about codes, about analytics. I think that there are still barriers, especially in the field that I'm working in, Earth observation, to do a true open code. Usually, but SpaceX have nothing to do with it. I mean, at the end of the day, SpaceX is vertically integrated launcher that managed to generate a business model that's established on very low costs and prices for the end users. It's doing phenomenal. The fact that they're now starting to communicate directly with clients, you can basically order in their website like 5K per kilo to launch a rideshare satellite. It's
5.5. There was a 10% increase.
Still, I mean, if I would show you, Meidad, this website 10 years ago, you would tell me, what? It's like beyond.
3 years ago, 3 years ago, it was still $50,000 per kilo.
It's phenomenal. It's amazing. But at the end of the day, when you're looking to the open innovation, if you were a serial entrepreneur in IT, you wouldn't try to compete with Cisco. You wouldn't try to compete with the big conglomerates of the world. You wouldn't try to have to compete directly with Cisco or with Microsoft to do operating systems, or with you wouldn't open a cloud that would compete directly with AWS or Microsoft. You try to go to the niches that you have a blue ocean that you can keep competing. This is the main thing. Now, Israel is biased, if you ask me. Again, this is supposed to be a very optimistic talk, but Israel, because our heritage is in launching, in designing, manufacturing, operating, launching, doing the ground segment on our own, we think that the innovation will come from there. But no, try to go to other fields, try to go to analytics, to communication, to new models, to Meidad mentioned maybe in space exploration, agriculture, whatever. So if you ask me, these are the main things where innovation will come from, not from direct competition with the big players in the world.
All right, Mr. Pariente, Mr. Livne, I'm afraid we are running out of time. So before we say goodbye, let me remind you of upcoming events. And thank you, of course, for your amazing talk. Thank you, Torsten. And later today at 6 p.m., we're running another Space Café. It's Space Café Italy by Dr. Emma Gatti in a conversation with nobody else than the president of the Italian Space Agency, Giorgio Saccoccia. On the 1st of December, 8 p.m., join us in the 59th Space Bar by Astro Agency. On the 6th December, 4 p.m., join our Space Café 33 Minutes with Joel Spark, live from Scotland, because Torsten will be there on tour. And then on the 8th of December at 5 p.m., join our Space Café Brazil by Ian Grosner. And of course, as always, all events are going to be online on Eventbrite, and we would love to hear your feedback. So please check in with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And don't forget to sign up for our daily or bi-weekly, our bi-weekly newsletters. And if you'd like to treat yourselves with something special, become a Space Watcher today or help us in the supporter program. Thank you all very much for your interest today. Toda Rabba, thank you Meidad and Ran for hosting and participating to this inspiring talk. And thanks again to the entire team behind the scenes who are doing this great job week by week again. I hope you will all stay safe and healthy. And thank you for joining us. I hope to see you next week. In the meantime, visit our website and follow us on social media. And don't forget, become a space watcher. Bye.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.